Hi, this is Mr. Bissonette with episode 4 of Cognitive Studies. Today we'll be looking at two different things. We'll be looking at how we can use brain breaks when we are teaching and how we can use them when we're studying. And then we'll dive into what the memory palace is and how we can use it to organize long pieces of information. So if you notice, we have our coding system up here. From last time, we'll be using that in conjunction with the memory palace to show you how that kind of works. All right, brain breaks. This is one of those ones that's really fascinating to me. When I learned about it and then was able to apply it and then see it in use really made me a huge proponent of it. Before we get all the way into the brain breaks, though, we first have to discuss the two different modes that our brains work in. One of them is called focused mode. This is our problem-solving thinking. It's narrow. It's focused on a task. It depletes our brain energy as we are in it. And depending on the person, but we can stay in it roughly that 8 to 15 minutes, that time that we can really focus on something. Our diffused mode, it is the random brain jumping all over the place, thinking about driving home, and home makes you think about the kitchen table, which makes you think about food and makes you think about what you're going to cook, and you wonder if you fed the dog. Okay? That's kind of how that brain performs when it's in diffused mode. Now, some of the things that diffused mode is really good for is creative thought. And we can actually engage ourselves into a creative process to kind of get our brains into that diffused mode. It regains brain energy. It's like doing a rest. It also helps our brain sort the information that we have received in the focus mode. If you were to think about it like weightlifting, if you're doing your bench press, when you're in the act of bench pressing, that would be your focus mode. And then when you're taking a rest break, that would be your diffused mode. And again, remember, our brains are like a muscle. The more we work them, the stronger that they get, the more stuff that we memorize, the better we are able to memorize the next time, the more time we spend focusing on something, giving ourselves a break, focusing on something, giving ourselves a break, the extended time that we can be in that focused mode. Now, when we move it into our teaching, the idea is to give our instruction from that 8 to 15 minutes if we can. And depending on the age of the students, we can do a couple different things. One, we can then go into a creative task that's related to what we're doing, or sometimes not even related to what we're doing. So let's say we were working on a problem set for 15 minutes. Sometimes I might say, stop, go ahead and draw me a picture of something that you're looking forward to doing this weekend. Even though that brain is switching into that diffused mode, even though we're not doing math problems, I'm, as a teacher, getting to find out what that student's interests are, what's going on with them, which can help me build a stronger rapport with the student and really build that class culture as well. So we can do that. Physical activity will also help us get into that diffused mode and to regain that brain energy. One of those kind of fascinating facts that I heard along the way is our brain requires more energy than any other organ in our body. I don't know if that one's completely true, but it makes sense when we get done with a really tough test and we've been thinking a lot, we're exhausted, we're tired, we're wore out. And again, that's because it requires so much energy to really do that focused work. Another rule of thumb on that is about the age of the kid is the amount of minutes that they can focus on something for. So an 8-year-old might be more around that 8 minutes, where a 16, 17-year-old, it might be a little bit more than that 15 to 20 minutes. And again, it's one of those deals where you practice it, you can work on building that skill and getting better with that skill the more that you practice it. So just because it's like, oh, I can only pay attention for 15 minutes now doesn't mean that down the road you won't be able to do it for longer. Also, if you want to check yourself to see how long you're able to stay in the focused mode, a simple way to do that is start reading a book. And then as soon as you notice your mind drifting away from what is actually on the page, set a timer when you start reading. Once you notice yourself drifting away, hit stop, and that will give you a good idea for the time that you can really focus on information for. So once you have that time for yourself established, now taking it onto the other side as a student, or if you're trying to learn something, whatever that number is, maybe reduce it by a minute or two. And if you're studying for something, set a timer for that time allotment, sit down, start studying, and then once the timer goes off, give yourself a break. Either an artistic break, a physical break would be kind of the best things you can do to help yourself. In that, when I'm telling my students to study, I always tell them it is better to do 3 times for 10 minutes, 3 separate times for 10 minutes, than trying to do 1 hour session before the night before you have your test. What happens if you try to study for an hour, you make it about 20 minutes into it, your brain gets bored, your brain gets tired, it gets exhausted, and it starts wandering instead of actually focusing on the material. Another thing to think about, some people might argue, well, giving kids a brain break in class is wasting time that they could be working on problems. But kind of like that studying, after that 20 minutes, the student isn't paying attention anyways. So at the end of that time period, they will then naturally go into that diffused mode, and they will get that one storage session. Where if we do 15 minutes of work, 5-minute brain break, 15 minutes of work, 5-minute brain break, 15 minutes of work, end of class, then in one class period, we're now able to store 3 times the amount of information just by giving that brain a little bit of time to recover, store the information, and then be ready to go. Much like we would do bench press, do a recovery, and then get back to work. So it can be really effective in the classroom and when you're studying your own content. All right, the next one is going to be our memory palace. So up here, I have roughly 20 digits of pi. I already have coded our numbers to our letters to save a little bit of time for you. And I will show you with this example how we build our memory palace. So what a memory palace is a way to store and organize large amounts of information where the order matters. So think of any sort of place in your mind's eye that you could close your eyes, you could walk through it, and you could visualize all the different places in it. For me, my memory palace for my 100 digits of pi is my grandma's house. And what I'm doing is I'm going to go through the house in the same exact order, and I'm going to place these pictures, images, and I revisit the images, and that's how I'm able to remember the different pieces. So if I walk up her front porch, there on the right side is going to be one image. On the left side of the porch is going to be another image. On the door is going to be another image. I open up, I look and see the dining room. On the table, I have a couple images there. I then go into her office, and I have a couple images in there. And I start placing these images all through the house, and I'm going to walk through the house in the same order. What this does is this essentially gives our brains more access points to the information so that we can better recall it. So here we go. So tire tool, if we were to walk up to the first part of the porch, I'm going to see this tire tool banish Lemel. Okay. Now, this is where it's kind of interesting because you can find a way to make it work with your own self. Banish means to expel somebody from somewhere. But for whatever reason, when I first initially memorized this, I thought banish like vanish, and I think of it as it disappearing, but however you want to do it. So what happens is the first image is a tire tool. It banishes, and then there is a pile of Lemel. Lemel is metal shaving, so it kind of makes sense. When I look to the other side of the porch, the next image I'm going to see is fib, cowboy, man. So what happens, this guy, he's lying about being a cowboy. Instead of being a cowboy, he's just an ordinary man. And I visualize this whole picture and I place it there. Next, I look at the door and I'm going to see my fresh. Okay, so that's going to be me, myself. I'm standing. I have air fresheners hanging from my armpits to help keep me fresh. Okay, wild, crazy, weird. Our brains will remember that better. Now, it also is partially working on the chunking. That's what allows this to happen and work as well. But as we start pulling it apart, you can see how it helps keep things organized. And again, if we decoded it, T would be 1, R would be 4, T 1, L 5, B 9, N 2, SH 6, L 5, and you can see it's going to match up with the 20 digits that we have up there. So if you want to pause and take a closer look at that, make sure that all the numbers are correct and all the letters kind of line up. You can totally do that as well. I use the Memory Palace when I'm memorizing a deck of cards. Moonwalking with Einstein, Josh 4, he talks about that. And again, with the cards, we'll go into how they build that system later on in a different episode. But it's kind of cool. I've used the Memory Palace for memorizing presidents. I will place the image that reminds me of their name in different spots, and that allows me to walk through and have that organization of the presidents as well. If I have a grocery list, sometimes I will use a Memory Palace for that, make big giant things to be able to memorize those better. It's kind of a fun one to play with. So again, that's Mr. Bissonette. That's another episode, episode 4, as we're diving into the cognitive series. I'm having a lot of fun putting these together. I hope you're enjoying them as we are going through them. Again, share this with someone if you find it fascinating. Try it and see if it works. Send us a comment if you realize that it works. Teachers, try to give those brain breaks. It is a great tool, and you're not wasting any time. You're getting way more opportunities to store information in your class, and you're working with the brain instead of against the brain. In the same way, if you're studying, give yourself those breaks. It's going to be way better to do 3 10-minute sessions than try to do 1 hour and cram it and make it a painful ordeal for yourself. So again, thank you for watching, and hope you all have a great day.